嘉宾。我们现在进行的是平行论坛10，主题是投资性别平等和女力。Ladies and gentlemen, this session is panel 10, Invest in Gender Equality and Women's Empowerment. 我们掌声欢迎引言人，泛太平洋暨东南亚妇女协会理事长陈曼君理事长 from PASIWA 为我们担任引言，掌声欢迎。理事长好，理事长好。
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Welcome to today's session. My name is Mandy Chen. I'm the PASIWA Taiwan's president. PASIWA Taiwan is honored to be the co-host of this summit and also to hosting this panel discussion today. Because invest in gender equality and women's empowerment has been an important mission of PASIWA ever since its founding in 1928. With our special consultative status to the United Nations Economic and Social Council, and also with our representative in UN, Geneva, New York, SCAP, and UNESCO, we have been promoting and advocating for gender equality for a long time with our members internationally. So as one of the founding members, PASIWA Taiwan has always focused on gender equality and women's empowerment. We always believe that with intergenerational and also intersectional cooperation, we can really achieve the UN Sustainable Goal 5. So we have a variety of programs in youth education and also in women and children empowerment and also promoting world peace. So we are very honored today to have our moderator, Dr. Lai, who's assistant professor of the College of Humanity and Social Science at the Providence University in Taiwan, as our moderator. And she will also she will introduce our two esteemed speakers, Ms. Omna, Sreeni-Ong, and also Dr. Chen. So we hope they will talk to us about why and how invest in gender equality and women's empowerment is so important. And hopefully by end of the session, more people can join us in the pursuit and completion of the Sustainable Goal 5 in gender equality. So thank you again for joining us today. Also, thanks to Women's Foundation for having this summit. And hopefully we can all come together and achieve our goals. Thank you.
Thank you very much. From PASIWA, Madam Chen, 谢谢理事长为我们引言。紧接着，我们欢迎上台的就是我们这个阶段的主持人了。我们掌声欢迎静宜大学人文暨社会科学院助理教授，掌声欢迎赖红汝赖教授担任我们的主持人。And now, ladies and gentlemen, our moderator, Professor Lai.
Hi, everyone. My name is Hong Ru. I'm from Providence University, Taichung City in Taiwan. Today, I'm your monitor. My responsibility today is going to introduce two of our excellent speakers today. So for the first speaker, Our first speaker is Omna. Yes, she's waving to us. Omna Sreeni-Ong. She's the founder and managing director of ENGENDER Consultancy, which is an award-winning social enterprise committee towards advancing the empowerment of women and gender equality in Malaysia. And she got 25 years experience in the design, development, and coordination of programs in the areas of policy development and gender advocacy. And Omna currently served on the Malaysia NGO Coalition, CEDAW Advocacy Working Committee, and joined CSO working groups, and is also the co-chairperson of the Malaysia CSO Coalition Against Modern Slavery. So she was also a recipient of Women Excellence Award 2019 by the Kuala Lumpur and Selangor State Women's Council. And in 2021, due to receive a National Outstanding Entrepreneur Lifetime Achievement Award awarded by Kingsley Strategy Institute for Asia Pacific. So please give a round of applause to welcome Omna. So her talk today aiming to draw the importance of why we have to invest in gender equality. And she will give us a short description of the journey of Malaysia's CSOs and NPOs and the impact they created. And thirdly, she's going to introduce her organization ENGENDER, how it gives social impact initiatives to advance gender equality. And lastly, what is needed to achieve a transformative achievement of SDGs in 2030, and also the role of the youth in it. So our second speaker is Professor Mandy Chen. So please give a round of applause for Professor here. Yes. So she's the professor of Department of Sociology at National Taipei University, and her expertise is in social policy analysis, women's welfare, and labor health. So please have a seat, Professor. Thank you. So she's going to give us an insightful talk on the gender issues happening in the business world. She will give us an idea on the picture of female labor market participation rate through statistics, and look into the policy which aim into boost women's engagement in the business world. And finally, she will offer us the possible options that government could do to encourage the entrepreneurship amongst women in a Taiwanese context. So I think after this introduction, so we should start our talk from Omna. So she will give us a talk in 25 minutes, right? So maybe we will give you a little bit notice before the end of the time. Thank you, Omna. Shall we begin?
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Hello and good afternoon, everyone, and warmest greetings from Malaysia. I'm delighted to join you all gathered today at this summit in Taiwan and to share with you my thoughts and my experience on this very important topic of investing in gender equality. Next, please. So achieving gender equality and empowering women and girls is the unfinished business of our time and the greatest human rights challenge in our world. Now, this was stated by the UN Secretary General in 2020. Our attention to gender equality will determine the future of humanity. That being so, it should be at the core of all our work and endeavors. So to begin, I think it's important for us to be on the same page and have a common understanding of gender equality. What does it mean? And what is its aim and outcome? Firstly, when we speak of gender, we are referring to both women and men. So gender equality refers to the equal rights, responsibilities, and opportunities of women and men, girls and boys. Gender equality implies that the interests, the needs, the priorities of both women and men are taken into consideration, recognizing the diversity of the different groups of women and men. Now, gender equality is a state when women and men enjoy the same opportunities, rights, and obligations in all spheres of work and life. Now, when they share equally in the distribution of power and influence, when they have equal opportunities for financial independence through work and even in the home front, and where they share responsibilities for the home and children. So gender equality is not one which is instituted only in legislation and policy, but more importantly is where we see equality of outcomes. Equality of outcomes in the lived realities of all women and men, boys and girls, across all strata of society, and in all its diversity. Next, please. So, where are we now? Yes, we have come a long way and we've made progress, but there's still persistent systemic challenges which threaten to widen the rift, not to mention the pandemic, which has greatly impacted any progress made previously. Next, please. Now, the World Economic Forum's Global Gender Gap Report 2021 tells us that it will take 136 years to close the gender gap. The impact of the pandemic, as we can see, has set us back 36 years. Now, on the economic front, it will take us 268 years. On the political front, that is women in decision-making, it is a dismal 146 years. Now we're talking about closing the gap, not any transformative outcome, just closing the gap. So this report card is indicative of our status in gender equality, and it's really a very concerning reality that needs urgent attention as we are talking about 50% of the population which is at stake. Next, please. Now, the devastating coronavirus pandemic, as we all know, has disproportionately, globally, has disproportionately impacted women, girls, and vulnerable communities. It has exacerbated pre-existing, what we already knew, pre-existing inequalities across every domain, whether health, economy, security, or social protection, and at many levels reversing, and this is the concerning element, many levels reversing precious gains made in closing the inequality gaps. The impact is a global phenomenon, and we see the impact on women in the loss of jobs and reduced working hours, in the spike in domestic intimate partner, which all come under gender-based violence, the increased burden of unpaid care and domestic work, the lack of access to information, especially critical information, challenges in accessing sexual and reproductive health care, emotional impact of the pandemic, where we see higher rates of stress and anxiety. And then, of course, absence of women in decision-making spaces. We don't have the critical numbers there. So recognizing gender equality as an enabler, which has a multiplier effect in achieving all developmental goals, should in itself make a strong case for the need to focus on taking strategic measures, not business as usual, strategic measures to address inequalities and advance gender equality. Next, please. So in adopting the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development in 2015, this is something I'm really excited about and so passionate about. 193 member states have reaffirmed in the Sustainable Development Goals 5 that gender equality, now important to note that they reaffirmed, that means they committed to that gender equality is central to the achievement of sustainable development for all, not only for men, for all by 2030. So no country has achieved gender equality, and the COVID-19 crisis threatens to erode the limited gains that have been made. Now, we all know that human rights and gender equality are core principles of this bold agenda, underpinning our efforts to prevent conflict, overcome divisions, and address the root causes of inequality, instability, and injustice. Gender equality, we also know, is central to this transformative vision as an important goal in itself. And we are told that it is a catalyst for progress across the entire agenda. Now, growth will not be inclusive we will not succeed in ending poverty as long as women are economically and socially disempowered in the world of work, in their homes and communities. Inclusive and peaceful societies will also remain out of reach until women and girls are safe from all forms of violence and can shape decisions that affect their own lives. Next, please. Yes, it is a long and winding journey full of success and setbacks. And I think everyone in civil society movements, and many of you in this room here today and online, will share the same. So I thought I'll tell you our story, the story of the Malaysian story, from my experience thus far in the ongoing journey of the women's movement. Now, the journey towards gender equality began even as early as 1960. And our work, as you will all agree, is not a direct and easy path. But a reflection on this journey is necessary to keep us all aligned to and on track in realizing the vision of achieving gender equality. Critical is not merely in words, but in outcomes. Next, please. Now, the call for women's rights, of course, began in the 1930s and 1940s in the form of women's rights champions who stood up against resistance, persecution, and were even jailed for their progressive stand in calling for inclusion and recognition of the rights of women. In 1960s saw the emergence of the women's movement in Malaysia. Now, the ripple effect began in 1959 when 3 women were elected as members of the parliament. The representation of women's leadership at the highest level in itself could have been the impetus for the next stage of development in 1960, when 8 women, remember, when I say 8 women, I'm talking about the power of one, came together from various organizations and decided that there was a need to amplify voices to address the multiple discriminations of women. The next landmark decision in recognizing women's role in the country was the designation of the National Women's Day on 25th of August. But then the 8 women then went on to also form a pro-tem committee and to form the National Council of Women's Organizations in Malaysia. Now, soon after, the president of NCWO was also one of the 3 women who were elected in parliament, was appointed as the first women minister. And I think then began the engine of the women's movement, which has now mushroomed into hundreds of grassroots organizations. And together they form a robust component of civil society, contributing to many landmark achievements in achieving gender equality in the country. Next, please. So from early on as 1960s, the women's groups embarked on a mission to address legislations and policies which have been discriminatory towards women. So by year 2000, their strong advocacy and systematic approach resulted in reforms to legislations, including rape and molestation, domestic violence. I won't go through the list, you can see all of them there. But the evolution of this advocacy process was strengthened at every level of achievement. The whole process also helped government to recognize the capability and the expertise within the women's movement. Today, the members of women's movement are working with government in the formulation of the sexual harassment legislation and the gender equality legislation. But friends, it's still not easy. And the process of consultation is long, but it's necessary as it allows us to strengthen our understanding of core gender equality concepts, both among policymakers and society as a whole. And this process in itself contributes towards the advancement of gender equality. Next, please. Now, Malaysian women's organizations were also active participants at the international level. We had a representative of the CSW as early as 1969 and a CEDAW committee member in 2005. And they were both participants. Women's groups were also both participants and on government delegations to the UN Women's Conferences, serving often as advisors to the government representatives. Now, participating in the international discourse on gender equality was important to understand normative standards which govern all our work and how it can be applied nationally. The women's organizations also work in a coordinated manner. They apply these learnings, resulting in significant changes and reforms at the level of legislation and policy to this day. Next, please. The National Council of Women's Organizations was also instrumental in the formation of early national machineries. This was also, which you can see there, I've listed them there. And this was also followed by the formation of the Department of Women's Affairs and later even the formation of the Ministry of Women, Family and Community Development, which was really an advocacy, through the advocacy of NCW in a memorandum to the government. Next, please. NCW was also instrumental in providing key recommendations to the national policy on women through a bottom-up approach when it met with women at the grassroots to hear their issues and recommendations, which was appended to the cabinet paper and presented to government. Now, the coalition also raised gender concerns from as early as 1981 when it participated in the government's national budget consultations. Through the mushrooming of more women's organizations, our advocacy intensified, and there were several other significant landmark decisions and enactments, which included Malaysia's ratification of CEDAW and in 2001, the amendment to the federal constitution, which prohibits discrimination on the basis of gender. Now, you also find women's, next please. You also find women's organizations have over the years and also now been appointed to participate actively in several high-level consultative spaces, including the National SDG Steering Committee, the Domestic Violence Task Force, the Special Task Force on Sexual Harassment and Gender Equality Legislation, National Council for Anti-Trafficking in Persons, and also on many government delegations to international and regional meetings. Please I hope I don't give you the impression that everything is perfect. It's still a long journey. We are still struggling in so many ways. But what we've managed to do and achieve is to institutionalize some of these partnerships. Next, please. Now, 2015 was groundbreaking period in the evolution of humanity as a whole, where, as I mentioned, 193 countries signed the Agenda 2030, which instituted the SDGs and its framework for action, one which put human rights and gender equality as core principles and cross-cutting issues. Now, achieving the ambitious Sustainable Development Goals, particularly the goal on gender equality and women's empowerment, requires transformative shifts, integrated approaches, and new solutions. Going by the rate that we are at now, we know that it will take 2 generations to close the gaps. So what is required is a shift in thinking, bringing innovations in policies and management, finances, science, and technology that can disrupt the business as usual mindset. This we are seeing as a way to accelerate the achievement of the SDGs for all. Next, please. So how can we, who are working on gender equality, use innovative ways to close the gap? What does meaningful collaboration look like? How do we design solutions that are impactful and transformative? How can we take a whole of society approach where every person is a protagonist in contributing towards the betterment of society? Now, these were my reflections during that period that resulted in a bold decision, which I took in exploring these ideas. And next, please. Where I set up ENGENDER Consultancy, which is a non-profit social enterprise that is focused on advancing gender equality, which we know has the potential to transform communities. Next, please. So based on our reflection of the advancement of gender equality in the country, we realize that it is important that our work should be to engender people, that is government, civil society, and private sector, to engender policies and processes. So you can say that we are process-driven, and actually you don't find us undertaking any work which sounds or looks like a standalone event. Even your event today is part of a process. Next, please. We consider ourselves as a learning organization that develops solutions which have 3 critical components. It must be strategic, it must be a collaborative model, and it must work towards transformative outcomes. So we consider all these before embarking on any project. Next, please. So advancing gender equality and transforming communities is not just our tagline. It is really embedded in the ethos that defines the way we work. The hummingbird, as you can see, is our logo. And inspired by the way the hummingbird reaches deep into a blossom to source its nectar, we endeavor to go to the root of issues, to read the realities in the community or read the realities of the issues, and to uncover core concerns. Now, we do this through collaborative and consultative engagements with all our collaborators, where we draw on the critical experience and learning of the communities that we work with to develop, that is to co-create transformative and sustainable solutions. Next, please. Now, our work is very firmly rooted in and guided by international normative standards, which are benchmarks, which informs all areas of our works. And I won't go into much details, but if you're not familiar with these, I really suggest you go and read it, because benchmarks are very important, and many of our countries are committed towards these international treaties. Next, please. So our specialization and general areas of work fall under 4 major categories. One is gender-based analysis, where we know that policies, projects, and programs affect different groups of people differently. We conduct a comprehensive analysis to examine their design, implementation, and outcomes through a gendered perspective so that we can provide help them provide equitable deliverables and impactful outcomes. Our flagship programs in this area are Gender Lens in the National Budget Roundtable, and I'll talk about it in a while, capacity building of CSOs and gender responsive budgeting. Now, another area is our strategic advocacy planning. And we know that strategic advocacy is a key driver in accelerating the process towards gender equality, the operative word being strategic. Now, we work with national and grassroots organizations to develop their advocacy roadmap by strengthening organizational capacity to deliver on their goals to advance gender equality. And our flagship programs are the strategic advocacy of state women's councils at the state level across Malaysia, and also on our capacity building and advocacy work of anti-trafficking organizations as well. We also undertake gender-sensitive monitoring and evaluation, where it's important to measure the transformative impact of policies, projects, and programs on communities, and that it requires a diligent monitoring and evaluation. Our gender-sensitive M&E framework is designed to assess how a project or program's activities impact the gendered lives of its beneficiaries. And here we also monitor the implementation of international normative standards. We monitor parliamentary debate on gender issues as well, and we conduct situational analysis on trafficking in persons in Malaysia. Now, lastly, our area in deepening the gender equality discourse, and this is something ongoing. We know it's going to take 2 generations unless we act fast, but also how can we deepen that gender equality discourse? So we create spaces to foster conversations for change, where groups explore and reflect on concepts and principles of gender equality, as well as relationships, and also to understand the lived realities of individuals and communities. Next, please. So we also have a range of we call them the 360 consultancy programs. And this 360 approach adopts a holistic and systematic methodology, which is driven by an emphasis on transformative and sustainable outcomes, co-created by the organizations and the communities we work with. And they include sexual harassment to create a harassment-free workplace, child protection, which is to safeguard the best interests of children through child protection policies and practices, which create a culture of well-being, disability-confident employers, which is designing inclusive workspaces both in form and culture, and gendering corporate CSR, putting a gender lens instead of being gender neutral, putting a gender lens on corporate social responsibility. And also equality programs for youth, which is really to nurture a culture of equality from the very young. So this will prevent harmful attitudes and habits from moving from one generation to another. Next, please. We also have, our work is also as a whole, we are a social enterprise, and our profits also support, the money we make rather, support a growing range of social work that we undertake. And I will mention some of our work in this area, but we'll highlight the other work that we do in the next few slides. We have a program called No Family Left Behind, which is a capacity building program for resident groups in low-income communities. And what's really important and unique, I think, in the way we work is to build their capacity to take charge of their own affairs. And co-creation is really an operative word in our modality as well. We're also actively involved in the civil society advocacy working groups, such as the ones for SDGs, for CEDAW, for law reform, anti-trafficking, and so on. Next, please. Now, this is the exciting group that I work with, and that gives me joy every day, every work day, and more. Now, ENGENDER works on a collaborative model engaging a diverse group of passionate individuals who've been on an average of about 20 years in working on these issues. And they are subject matter experts who are brought together and driven by a common vision, and I think that's what's critical. Next, please. And we're also delighted to work with a growing number of collaborators from government, international agencies, private sector, and civil society organizations. Next, please. Now, let me tell you about one of our flagship programs, and this is the Safe City campaign. It is a social impact initiative by ENGENDER Consultancy and Sisterhood Alliance, our local partner. It looks at creating safe and empowering public spaces free from sexual harassment through the development of locally owned evidence-based initiatives to end violence against women and girls and support women's socio-economic participation. Now, it takes a whole of city engagement, knowing that 78% of our population resides in cities, and it's also the same numbers globally. Now, this whole of city engagement involves local government agencies, residents groups, private sector, civil society organizations, and the community in multi-stakeholder consultations to co-create safe public spaces free from sexual harassment for all. Now, the initiative itself began with a national survey that ENGENDER conducted on sexual harassment in public spaces to gather data on the prevalence. Now, this is where evidence-based policymaking comes in, right? We found that 59% of our respondents directly experienced sexual harassment in public spaces. And we also gathered data on location, type of harassment, number of times, experience of the affected persons, and their recommendations to address the issue, and their fears as a result of this as well. And we used this critical data to work with multi-stakeholders to create solutions from the city level up. In fact, 2 days ago, we were with the Ministry of Women sharing this data, and they were very excited about it because it is the ministry that is now drafting the sexual harassment legislation. Next, please. Now, our other flagship project is on gender-responsive budgeting. As we know, women and men experience life differently. And if you didn't already realize this, I suggest you go back and speak to women and speak to men and ask them the most basic questions. Ask a woman how she spends her whole day. How does she use her time the whole day? What does she do for her 24-hour cycle or 12-hour cycle? And ask a man what he does for a 12-hour cycle. It will give you a glimpse as to how they experience life differently. Now, and in that regard, developing the national budget from a gender perspective will ensure equitable impact of government policies on women and men, boys and girls. It will also recognize the real contributions all individuals make to the economy. Now, in this way, the government can evolve and implement policies that ensure equitable distribution of benefits and economic growth for all, especially the vulnerable and poor women and men, minority groups, children and persons with disabilities, and of course, our elderly. Now, our project builds capacity in civil society organizations to participate in engendering the budget and strengthening the advocacy through a parallel gender-responsive budget cycle led by civil society. So we're embarking on it this year. We had already started it 2 years ago by doing the scrutiny on the national budget for gender lens. So this is really quite exciting, and I look forward to coming and talking to you about it, maybe in your subsequent summit. Next, please. Today, we are immersed in the implementation of the SDGs, which has not only does it have a standalone goal for gender equality and empowerment of women, but from its rollout, it has seen that gender equality is the catalyst, the accelerator for the achievement of all the goals. And civil society organizations, including women's organizations, are active participants in the process. Today, we have a seat on the National SDG Steering Committee. ENGENDER, I have a seat on the National SDG Steering Committee, and also I'm on the Secretariat of the All-Party Parliamentary Group on SDGs. I'm a gender consultant of the APPGM, and also participating in instituting gender responsiveness in gender responsive approaches in localizing of SDGs in parliamentary constituencies. Also looking at, we also given input to the SDG roadmap and also to the Voluntary National Review for the HLPF, the High Level Political Forum on SDGs as well. Next, please. Sorry, I am cognizant of time and I'm rushing a little bit. Now, one of the exciting programs that I'm involved in is with the, as I mentioned earlier, the All-Party Parliamentary Group on the SDGs. And this is in my capacity as lead coordinator of the 2 parliamentary constituencies in Sarawak in Malaysia. The APPJM SDGs mandate is to localize the SDGs, and the project is a slum incubator initiative which aims to build capacity and empower slum residence groups and community to take charge of their own affairs. Now, these are communities which, by nature of them being slums, they are left behind in service delivery. So it's an exciting project where we work hand in hand with the slum community, capacitate them to conduct their own needs assessment. You know, showing respect to people at all levels will surprise you as to their capacity to actually undertake some of these things which we think are just the purview of the academics. You know, they did it so well, and in the process, it has also built their capacity. They conducted town hall consultations, identified and prioritized issues, and also undertook the programs selected by the communities. Now, we work together very well. We go through a rigorous process of consultation, planning, implementation, reflection, adjustment, and alignment in a continual process of seeing who's left behind. Next, please. Now, in all our projects for the APPJM SDG, we adopt a human rights-based approach, which is inclusive, consultative, and collaborative. It looks at the issues in a constituency in an integrated manner and develops solutions which are coherent, involving multiple stakeholders from government agencies, civil society, and community. Now, there's also close monitoring that's done all along the project cycle to chart a transformative outcome. And at the heart of all our work is a deliberate effort to ensure a gender-responsive approach. Now, we are guided by and cognizant that gender equality is cross-cutting across all the SDGs. And as I mentioned earlier, it's an accelerator and catalyst, and it has a multiplier effect. Now, that's where the magic happens, and a direct impact on the implementation and achievement of all the goals. Next, please. Now, another interesting project we're working on now is a one-stop information portal for women, and this is to address the issue of access to information. Currently, information on government aid, job portals, business support, programs, training, or helplines are scattered. And I won't be surprised if it's the same in your country. I stand to be corrected respectfully. So they're scattered, at least in Malaysia. So what wanitaboleh.com, which means, the word wanita boleh means women can. Now, it seeks to bring critical information directly to women at all levels without them having to navigate the very confusing maze-like online systems as well. Now, another very interesting, sorry, next please. Oh, okay, I got a message that time is over. I'll move very quickly. So another very interesting project we embarked on is building capacity and empowering Rohingya youth. And I'll just give you 1-2 seconds to look at it. I can talk to you another time about it, but this is addressing child marriage and education among the Rohingya community. Next, please. Now, next, please. Now, one very exciting point about this project is, again, building change makers among the Rohingya youth. That is moving people from becoming mere beneficiaries to become protagonists of the community and to build advocates within the community itself. Next, please. The other project that we do, as I mentioned earlier, is really parliamentary oversight, working with legislators. We do monitoring of parliamentary debate, briefing session, and support the Special Select Committee as well. Next, please. So what are some of the challenges? Political will, volition, and action, we need to improve on that, and that's always a challenge. Systemic and sociocultural barriers, lack of data to facilitate evidence-based policymaking, and gender-responsive budgeting, conceptual understanding of gender equality concepts, technical capacity to undertake gender mainstreaming. Now, that's a big issue. Next, please. Okay, so what are some of the key learning? Power of collaborative action, strategic advocacy, institutionalizing the seat on the table, evidence-based policymaking, keeping gender on the agenda, keep it on the agenda at all times, public awareness and empowerment, especially through the media, empowering grassroots women and men to facilitate their voice and agency, support government capacity on gender equality, and really importantly, and this is what the SDGs is teaching us, how can we facilitate a whole of society approach, because government cannot do it alone. Now, it's about shifting the needle. We certainly do not want to take 136 years for anything to happen. I personally want it in my lifetime. And I just want to say, and to all the young people out there as well, and the youth as well, that please learn from the 8 people, the 8 women who came together and formed that coalition, that we should never doubt that a small group or even one person of thoughtful, committed people can change the world. Indeed, it is the only thing that ever has. So thank you very much for this.
Thank you, Omna. Thank you for your valuable experience. It's too good to skip, but we have to keep our timeline here. So thank you for sharing your experience of involving the work of gender equality. But Omna, please stay online with us for a few more minutes, because we're going to have some questions for you later from the audience. So now we'll have our second speaker, Professor Mandi Chen. She will give us an idea about what can be done to promote female entrepreneurship from the policy perspective. Please, Professor.
Okay. Hi, everybody. It's nice to have chance to share the gender issue in social enterprise with you. I'm a professor in Department of Social Work, National Taipei University. Yeah, I think to begin with, we would like to see what's the specialty of Taiwan's women in the labor market. Then we go into the topic of social enterprise. And if we see the figure, we can find that women actually, they join the labor market before marriage. But after they get married, before they have children, they still can keep over 70% of them can join the labor market. And if they have children under 6, you can see the red line, and you can find that if women have a little baby, they cannot join the labor market. And after the children go to the elementary school, the green line, and you can see they come back, maybe a little bit of them will come back to the labor market. So we do find that the marriage or child will damage women's opportunity to go into the labor market. And if we compare the labor force participation rate between men and women, before they get married, men and women, their labor force participation rate almost the same. They are over 90%. But after that, you can find women, the gap between men and women become larger and larger until retired. And if we compare with the situation is not only happening in Taiwan, the OECD country all have the same situation. So we call this phenomenon is M-shape of women's employment. And if you see the Japan situation, the Japan is the green line, and we can find that women may they may reach the top before they get married, and they have children, they will withdraw from the labor market and come back after the children grow up a little bit. So we call it the M-shape. And also the same situation in Korea, in South Korea. You can see the blind line. The blind line also have the M-shape, but it's not the situation in Taiwan. You can see the orange line, and Taiwan only have one peak. You can see if you see the orange line, you can see the Taiwan will reach the peak. Let me try to. Taiwan will reach the peak before they get married, and they withdraw from the labor market, and they never go back to the labor market, and just withdraw it. And if you see the red line, you can see that's the men of Taiwan, and they never quit from the labor market. The marriage won't damage their opportunity into the labor market. So that's quite different situation and quite special in Taiwan. Women quit from the labor market but never go back. So actually the government do a lot of things, try to promote women into the labor market, especially between the year 2000 to year 2008. They promote a lot of projects, try to help women to start their business, small business. So we have 飞燕计划 or 创业凤凰, something like that. They are quite successful. So a lot of women start their small business. So after that, after year 2008, all the policies focus on how to share the child care burden with the families. But they don't have special project focused on women business. And we can find that the government may issue the child care leave with pay, 育婴留停 and child care allowance, 儿童津贴 育婴津贴 and in year 2018 we all have quasi public nursery policies, 准公托计划. They are all trying to release the burden of the families and want women don't quit their job, just can combine their childbirth and work together. But we still find there are some problem for women. And to begin with, we would like a woman businesswoman told me to be a businessman first, then be a woman. In the business area, nobody will see you as a woman. Everybody see you as a businessman. So don't regard yourself as a woman. And we do find that there are some problem if the woman want to into the business. They face different challenge or they find some difficulty to into a small business. And they are different from men, not because they are physical differences, but because the society asks them to behave differently. So according to the APEC, they think there are 4 perspectives regarding to women's business. The first one is capacity building. And more women would like to take course before they start a business. But we find that more the training or the course, they focus in Taipei City. And in other areas in Taiwan, they are less likely to have a chance to take that kind of training. And for a married woman, they have to pick up their children, send their children to the school or what. They cannot leave their home for a long time. So it's difficult for them to take the same chance to get the same training. And also, we find that the woman, even though they want to start a small business like a social enterprises, maybe they don't want to do that just for profit. But business is a business. Nobody will like to lose all their money. So before you begin with your small business, you still need to have a lot of business knowledge about it. And the woman would like to know what they're good at and what they're interested in, then to begin with a small business. And the woman more likely to have consultant. Just like my student, my female student always want to see me, and they don't write anything. They just want to see me. And I say, it's no use for you to graduate. If you don't write anything, you will never graduate. But they still want somebody accompanying them. And, they just want to have a consultant. But for my male student, they seldom see me. They just give me a full of the thesis at last and tell me they want to graduate, but they don't need they don't need me at all. They don't want my advice at all. So I think they are quite different. Yeah. And we have, maybe the government have a consultant, but we seldom have the consultant about the tax or the finance. And you know, for the small business, they don't have money to find a professional content to make a good financial report for them. But if you don't have a very good financial report, it's impossible for you to get another loan in the future. So it's also very important. The consultant must have some specialty about the finance or the tax. And so a woman is less likely to get loan from the bank because the bank always like them have a very good guarantor. But some of the women, they don't have very good consultant. They don't have very good guarantor. So in America, they have some NPO. They will behave like a guarantor to help a woman who want to begin with a small business or the social enterprise to have a guarantor to borrow money from the bank. And we also find that some of the women, they start a business with their partner or their husband or their boyfriend. But maybe because the project in Taiwan, they especially focus on women, so women represent the whole team to be the one who borrow money from the government or join the government project. But actually, those women don't have any knowledge about the business they want to focus in. So we still encourage those women need to have knowledge about the market or the industry they are going to do the business because they're still the one who borrow the money from the bank. So finally, we find that the most important for the government is need to tell the people which industry or which business have potential for the future. They just not only encourage them to open a new business, but actually those people don't have any knowledge about which kind of industry have the very good future. So I think we all think that that's what the government should do. And the second one is market entrance. And the market is very important about marketing, channel, or business opportunity. But the government less likely to do that job. And they don't tell, they just give the money, they support, they open a small business. But actually, the most important is marketing. The product will not sell by themselves. If you don't have a very good packing, and the product, no matter how delicious the product is, people won't buy it. So you don't know, maybe you borrow the money from the bank and you spend all the money on buying the contents or buying the product. But actually, half of the money actually should spend on packing, make those things look delicious, and the people will buy it. But they don't have that kind of knowledge, or they don't have that kind of source to help them to make all the product to become beautiful or delicious or valuable. And it's also important. And also very important is the turnover rate. And because for the beginners, if they finish the product, they put it in the shop, and they still need time to sell the products, and they still need time to make the money back. So they don't have money for the second product. They need to wait until the first product sold. Then they have money for the next one, and the business won't go well. So that kind of knowledge, if they don't told a new starter, how can they know that? So this, and also we find that there's gender discrimination about women in the business. They don't believe that women can do business well in the market. And they will question why you don't go back to take care of your children. If you go out to do business, then who can take care of your children? And you don't think, maybe you think it's ridiculous in Taiwan, but even myself, I tried to find a job in Taiwan when I just come back from England. And the university also asked me a lot of questions about how can I manage my children? How can I pick up them after my school? In the morning, how can I send my children to the nursery school? And it looked like my husband is nothing at all. I need to do everything. Yeah. So that's kind of gender discrimination always happen. I don't think they will ask men about how can you cover from the childcare and the work. So and the third one is when you do the business, you need social network. But if the business controlled by men, they have their own social network, and they stick together. And as a woman, how can you into that kind of social network? So I think the government project, 飞燕计划 or 创业凤凰 are very good. They try to bring those people together, bring those business women together, and try to have connection, experience sharing, and also try to link their business together because they need to build up social capital. We call it social capital for women businessmen. Yeah. The third one is financial gating. That's the part that our government focus on. So, but a lot of social enterprise, maybe their idea are very beautiful, but if you want to get the support from the private company, the big company, I think they are much more focused on whether you were successful or not. They don't want to investment in a dream only. They will calculate whether you were successful or not. So make your project look like was successful, not only like a dream. If you want to get money from the private company. And the fourth one is women's empowerment. For a woman, if they go into the labor market, they need to cooperate, they need to solve out their child care problem and their family problem. We will talk about it later. And the final one is, as an enterprise, the society asks you have ambitious endurance and frustration tolerance and faith, something like that. You need to like a businessman. You cannot weak. That's very important. Even though women are not look like that kind of top person, but you have to become like that if you want to start a business. So we do find a lot of couples, they begin to a business together. But is it a happy marriage equal to happy business? In America, some scholars find the family system is too many words. Let me show you the picture. Yeah, if you build up a business with your partner or your husband, it's impossible to separate the family or the business. You need to build up the family good. Then the business will go good. If you argue with each other when you build up a business, then your family will break up. Then finally the business will break up. So these two systems are linked together. One successful, the other was successful. And finally, yes, we would like to say something about the specialty of women social enterprise. And first of all, we do find that there are some disadvantage for women to start small business. And there are some challenge maybe men will not meet. So we need to know more about it. And we still find that women need more accompanying, and they need to take a lot of course. So it's good if our government can give them some support about it. And the third one is the social investment and program. We could call the social investment program. And maybe the women, they don't have any skill, or maybe their job is good nowadays, but they still have to reserve some capabilities in the future. So they need to have some advanced course. If you want the boss can promote you as a manager, and you know nothing, and the boss will never promote you as a manager. So before you want to be a manager, you need to have the chance to learn the capability before the boss would like to promote you. So we call that is a social investment program. Learn more before you want to get promotion. And the fourth one is we want the government or the company can help marketing entrance. Yesterday I heard that a lot of people talking about, we should cooperate with the Department of Social Affairs. Yes, social enterprise, maybe the Department of Social Affairs would like to support social enterprise, that kind of project. But don't always stay in the welfare project. It won't make you successful in the future. And we still need the Department of Economic Affairs can help women or help the social enterprise into the labor market. Then the small business will continue. Yes, and we need more opportunity to connect together. Women enterprise need to have the opportunities to connection, social connection, or the business friend. Then they will make their business goes well. So social capital is very important in the future. And the last one I would like to share with you is go forward or win nothing, because we find that some women enterprise, they are much more conservative. They won't make the business too big. They will stay in small and small enough. Then because they may think they don't have a lot of money and their ability is limited. So they stay in the same label of the business. And finally, you will find that if you don't go forward, you don't make your business a little bit bigger, then you will lose the whole market in the future. So we find a lot of social enterprise, maybe they will quit from the whole market. Just 2 years, they will break up. They don't even have the money to return the loan to the bank. Not because they don't do the business good, just because they want to stay in the same label of the business. They keep the business small. So that's the final suggestion I would like to share with you. Go forward, go bigger, or you win nothing, okay? Thank you so much for your listening.
Thank you, Professor Chen, for your thoughtful points of presentation. It's really helped us to think how policy should modify to encourage women to involve the entrepreneurship. But since our time is going to the session is going to end. Omna, I'm very sorry about keeping you here, but perhaps we don't have much time to take audience questions, but I do have 8 questions in my tablet, but I would like to summarize all of them, perhaps to invite all of the audience to rethink 3 questions in the end. And also, if we have other opportunity to get together and have other conversation, we will keep the spirit. So the first thing I would like to invite you to rethink is any possibility that men can involve in this process to help us to start business or to give opportunity to support, to facilitate anything that not only social movement, not only business, in any way that we can improve our gender equality altogether, not just women sitting here doing our job. Okay, and the second thing is, since we have our Malaysian friends here, Omna, so is there any possible that we create more opportunity to have a conversation between different countries? Since Malaysia has such diversity in your society, any opportunity to learn from different countries will be a great nutrition for us to go to another steps to reach gender equality. And finally, I think there are existing structural problems for women in our society, not only in Malaysia, in Taiwan, all over the world. So we need to really give our strengths and make our effort to conquer this problem altogether. Thank you very much for your attention today. Please give a round of applause for yourself here. And thank you, Professor Chen and Omna here. Thank you very much.
And the round of applause also goes to our moderator. Can we take a group photo, please, with Madame Chen, please, from Pasiwa? Together with a group photo on stage, a wonderful discussion. Ladies and gentlemen, we take a small break, and then when we come back, we have one more session before